They left us on Highway 15 like garbage. My daughter was 7 years old, asleep in my lap, and they threw us out into the Nevada desert at sunset. But what they didn't know was that the baby monitor in Chloe's room had been recording everything for years, every vile word, every cruel laugh, every dirty secret. And I was about to make sure the whole world heard it. The sun was bleeding red across the desert sky that evening, somewhere between Las Vegas and Reno. I remember thinking how beautiful it looked, how the colors painted the barren landscape in shades of crimson and gold. Chloe's small body was warm against mine, her breathing soft and steady as she slept with her head on my lap. The hum of the engine was almost hypnotic, and for a moment, just a brief, foolish moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this family trip would be different. I should have known better. The car lurched to a sudden stop, tires crunching on gravel. My father Raymond's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, and there was nothing there. No warmth, no recognition, nothing but cold calculation. He turned in his seat, his expensive watch catching the dying light. "Get out, now!" His voice was ice. I blinked, confused, my arms instinctively tightening around Chloe. "What? Dad, what are you talking about?" My mother Diana adjusted her Prada sunglasses, even though the sun was already setting, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the leather armrest. "We're done, Alara. We've carried your burden long enough. Our compassion has run dry." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? No, you can't. Chloe's asleep. I don't have my phone. I don't have any money. We're in the middle of nowhere." Diana's laugh was sharp, cutting. "That's your problem now, isn't it? You can walk back to Vegas, or maybe wait for something more useful to come pick you up." "Please," I heard myself say, hating the desperation in my voice. "Please, just take us back to town. Any town. You can't just leave us here." Raymond's jaw clenched. "Either you step out on your own, or I'll throw both of you out myself. Don't waste any more of our time." Before I could respond, he was out of the car, yanking open my door with such force it made Chloe jerk awake. She started crying immediately, confused and frightened. "Mommy, what's happening?" "It's okay, baby." I tried to soothe her, but Raymond was already grabbing her, pulling her from my arms. Chloe screamed, reaching for me, her small fingers grasping at air. "Stop! You're scaring her!" I scrambled out after them, but Raymond shoved me hard. I went down onto the gravel-strewn asphalt, my palms and knees scraping raw against the rough surface. Pain shot through my hands as tiny stones embedded themselves in my skin. Through the tears blurring my vision, I saw my younger sister Scarlett slide from the middle seat into the spot I had just vacated. She looked out the window at me, sprawled on the ground, and smiled. Actually smiled. "Hey sis," she called out sweetly. "It's suddenly so much roomier in here without certain baggage taking up space." I struggled to my feet, ignoring the blood trickling down my shins, and ran to Chloe. Raymond had set her down roughly, and she was sobbing uncontrollably. I gathered her into my arms, holding her tight against my chest. "Please." I tried one last time, looking at my mother. "Please don't do this. She's your granddaughter." Diana didn't even look at me. She was reapplying her lipstick in the visor mirror. "We don't have a granddaughter. We never did." Raymond got back in the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and then they were gone, red taillights disappearing into the darkening desert like they were erasing us from their lives. The sound of Chloe's crying mixed with the wind, and I stood there, holding my daughter, feeling the cold asphalt beneath my feet and the even colder emptiness in my chest. I had known my family was difficult. I had known they favored Scarlett, their golden child with her perfect life and her perfect social media presence. I had spent years trying to earn their love, their approval, their basic respect. I had given them everything, had sacrificed so much, had swallowed my pride again and again. But this? Abandoning a woman and a child in the desert? This was beyond anything I could have imagined. Chloe was shaking in my arms, and I realized it wasn't just from crying. The desert night was coming fast, and with it, the cold. I peeled off my hoodie, the only warm thing I had, and wrapped it around her small frame. "It's going to be okay," I whispered into her hair, even as terror clawed at my throat. "Mommy's here. We're going to be okay." But I had no idea how. We were miles from anywhere, in the middle of the Nevada desert, with night falling fast. I had no phone, no money, no water. Nothing but the clothes on my back and my daughter in my arms. I started walking along the side of the highway, Chloe clinging to me, her face buried in my shoulder. Every few minutes, headlights would appear in the distance, and I would wave frantically, hoping, praying someone would stop. But car after car sped past, leaving us in clouds of dust and exhaust fumes. My feet ached. My hands throbbed where they were scraped. Chloe's crying had subsided into small hiccups and whimpers, but I could feel her trembling. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and I had given her my only warm layer. Then I heard it, the sound of an engine slowing down. I turned to see an old pickup truck, its paint faded and body dented, pulling up beside us. The window rolled down, revealing a weathered face, a man probably in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands gripping the steering wheel. He looked at us, at Chloe's tear-stained face and my bloody knees, and I saw something flicker across his expression. Pity? Concern? He opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. The truck started to pull away, and my heart sank. But a few minutes later, I heard the truck coming back. It pulled up beside us again, and this time the man got out. He went to the truck bed and pulled out 2 thick wool blankets and a thermos. "Get in," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "You and the little one. You don't look like you're out here for a midnight stroll." I wanted to cry from relief, but I was too exhausted. I climbed into the passenger seat, settling Chloe on my lap, wrapping us both in the blankets. The man, who introduced himself only as Silas, poured hot tea from the thermos into the cup and handed it to me. "Drink," he said, "both of you." The tea was sweet and warm, and Chloe took small sips before closing her eyes again. I wanted to explain, to tell him what had happened, but I couldn't find the words. How do you explain to a stranger that your own family had just thrown you away like trash? Silas didn't ask questions. He just drove, the truck rattling along the highway, taking us farther and farther from that spot, from that moment of absolute betrayal. After what felt like hours, the lights of a small town appeared in the distance. "Harmony Falls?" Silas said. "It's not much, but there's a diner that's open late. You'll be safe there." He pulled up in front of a modest building with a flickering neon sign that read, "Maeve's Diner." The windows glowed warm yellow in the dark night, and I could see a few people inside, nursing cups of coffee. Silas reached into his wallet and pulled out $50. "Here," he said, pressing it into my hand. "I have 2 daughters. Could be them someday, needing help from a stranger." "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice breaking. "Thank you so much." He nodded, then looked at Chloe, still sleeping in my arms. "Take care of her, and take care of yourself." Then he was gone, driving off into the night. This stranger who had saved us without even knowing our names. I carried Chloe into the diner. The warmth hit us immediately, and a few customers looked up briefly before returning to their meals. I found a booth in the corner, as far from everyone as possible, and gently laid Chloe down on the vinyl seat. She curled up immediately, exhausted from crying, from fear, from everything. I sat across from her, staring at my hands. They were filthy, bloody, shaking. Everything hurt. My body, yes, but more than that. Something inside me had broken out there on that highway, or maybe it had been breaking for years and this was just the final crack. I thought about my life leading up to this moment. I thought about all the times I had made excuses for them, all the times I had told myself that they loved me, they just didn't know how to show it. All the times I had bent over backward, had given until I had nothing left, hoping that somehow, someday, it would be enough. But it would never be enough. I would never be enough for them. A woman approached our table, middle-aged with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, and eyes that had seen too much of life's hardness. She set down 2 glasses of water without saying a word, then stood there, studying us. "You running from something?" she asked bluntly. I shook my head. "Recovering from something. There's a difference." Something in my answer made her nod, like she understood exactly what I meant. "I'm Maeve. This is my place. You look like you could use more than water." She disappeared into the kitchen and came back with 2 bowls of soup, a basket of bread, and a muffin. "On the house," she said when I tried to protest. "Eat, both of you." I woke Chloe gently, and we ate in silence. The soup was simple but warm, and it was the first real food we had had all day. Chloe fell asleep again almost immediately after eating, and I sat there, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on me. Maeve came back as the diner was closing. "You got somewhere to go?" I shook my head. She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "There's a storage room upstairs. Used to be my son's room before he moved out west. It's not much, but it's warm and it's got a bed. You can stay there tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out tomorrow." I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face before I could stop them. "Why are you helping us?" Maeve shrugged. "Because someone helped me once, when I needed it. Pay it forward, right?" That night, lying in that small storage room with Chloe curled up against me, I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, raw and overwhelming. The betrayal burned like acid in my chest. But underneath it all, something else was growing. Something cold and sharp and determined. They had wanted to erase me. To throw me away and move on with their perfect lives, their perfect image. Raymond with his successful financial podcast, Diana with her charitable work and school board position, Scarlett with her Instagram perfection and her lifestyle vlogs. They probably thought they would never hear from me again, that I would disappear into obscurity, maybe even die out there in the desert. But they were wrong. I would survive this. I would rebuild. And when I was ready, I would make sure the whole world knew exactly who they really were. The next morning, Maeve offered me a job washing dishes in exchange for the room and meals. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She also helped me get Chloe enrolled in the local elementary school, finding used clothes for her from donation bins, and even buying her a backpack and school supplies with her own money. "You pay me back when you can," Maeve said when I tried to refuse. "Right now, that little girl needs stability." Chloe was struggling. She had nightmares almost every night, waking up screaming, terrified that we were back on that highway, that she was being pulled away from me again. She was withdrawn at school, barely speaking, flinching when other kids got too close. My heart broke every time I saw her like that, so different from the bright, curious child she had been before. But slowly, so slowly, she started to heal. The teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was patient and kind. Maeve always had a cookie or a kind word for her. And I was there, every morning and every night, holding her, telling her we were safe, that nobody was going to hurt us again. As for me, I worked during the day and plotted at night. After Chloe fell asleep, I would lie awake, my mind racing. I thought about everything that had happened, everything they had done, not just that night but over years and years. And then I remembered the baby monitor. It had been a gift from Diana when Chloe was born, one of those fancy ones with video and cloud storage. I had set it up in Chloe's room and mostly forgotten about it, checking it occasionally when she was a baby but rarely after that. But it had been there, in that house, for years, recording. The thought made my heart race. Could it be? Could all those conversations, all those moments when they thought no one was listening, all be saved somewhere in the cloud? I went to the library the next day during my break, using one of their computers to try to access the account. It took me hours to remember the password, trying variation after variation until finally, miraculously, I was in. And there it was, years of recordings. Hundreds of hours of audio and video files, automatically uploaded and saved. My hands shook as I started going through them. There were the obvious ones, the conversations I remembered, the cruel comments, the dismissive remarks. But there was so much more. Conversations I hadn't been present for, things they had said when they thought I couldn't hear. Raymond talking on the phone about his loser daughter and how supporting me was a drain on resources that could be better invested elsewhere. Diana laughing with her friends about how I was a mistake that kept making mistakes. Scarlett drunk at a party, bragging about how she had convinced our parents to finally get rid of the dead weight. But there were worse things too. Financial schemes, tax evasion, Diana using charity funds for personal expenses. Raymond manipulating his podcast listeners, giving deliberately bad advice to people who trusted him so he could profit from their failures. Scarlett buying fake followers, fabricating sponsorships, using charity events as backdrops for her photos before leaving without donating a cent. It was all there. Every dirty secret, every lie, every cruel moment. Years and years of evidence. I spent weeks going through it all, learning how to download and organize the files. I taught myself basic video and audio editing using free online tutorials, staying up until 3 or 4 in the morning, my eyes burning from staring at the screen. Maeve never asked what I was doing, but sometimes she would bring me coffee, set it down next to me, and just squeeze my shoulder before heading back downstairs. I researched my family obsessively. Raymond's podcast, Smart Financial Leadership, had over 50,000 subscribers. He was building a brand, positioning himself as a guru, a mentor, someone people should trust with their life savings. Diana was beloved in the community, heading up the school board, organizing fundraisers, her face in the local paper at least once a month. And Scarlett, oh Scarlett, she had really made a name for herself. 300,000 Instagram followers, 100,000 on TikTok, brand deals with major companies, carefully curated content showing her perfect life, her perfect apartment, her perfect morning routine with artfully arranged coffee cups and inspirational quotes. They had everything: success, respect, admiration, all of it built on lies and cruelty. I created an anonymous account, calling it The Unfiltered Truth. No face, no identifying information, just a blank profile with a simple description that it would be exposing hypocrisy and lies. I set up the accounts to route through VPNs, to be untraceable, learning everything I could about staying anonymous online. Then I started my campaign. The first video was of Scarlett. I chose a clip from one of her parties, where she was drunk and bragging to her friends. Her voice was clear, unmistakable. I mean, honestly, most of my followers are bot. Like, who has time to actually grow an audience organically? And that charity thing last month? Please. I used the donation money to buy that Gucci bag, then used the bag as a prop for my giving back post. The irony is just chef's kiss. Her friends laughed, and she continued, "The best part is people actually believe I care about this stuff. It's all just content, babe. All just content." I edited it carefully, adding subtitles for clarity, obscuring any faces except Scarlett's, which I blurred just enough to create intrigue. The caption read, "Inside the filtered life of an influencer, Is your favorite lifestyle guru really who you think they are? I posted it late at night and went to bed, not expecting much. These things took time to gain traction, I knew that. But I was wrong. I woke up to my phone buzzing incessantly. The video had gone viral. Not just a few thousand views, but millions. It was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok. People were sharing it, dissecting it, trying to figure out who the influencer was. It didn't take long for someone to recognize Scarlett's voice, her distinctive laugh, the background of her apartment visible in the reflection of a window. Within hours, her name was trending. The comments were vicious. Former fans felt betrayed. Brands started distancing themselves immediately. Her follower count started dropping by the thousands, then tens of thousands. She posted a tearful apology video, but it only made things worse. People called it fake, manipulative, just more content. I watched it all unfold with a cold satisfaction. This was just the beginning. A week later, I posted the next video. This time, it was Diana. The footage was from a school board meeting, but the audio was from after, when she thought the recording had stopped. She was talking to another board member, her voice dripping with contempt. Honestly, that Martinez girl with the learning disability? I don't know why we waste resources on students like that. They're never going to contribute anything meaningful anyway. We should be focusing on the gifted students, the ones who actually have a future. The other board member had laughed uncomfortably, and Diana had continued, I'm just being practical. Special education is a money pit. But of course, we have to pretend to care because of optics. I posted it with the caption, when they think the cameras are off, is this who you want leading your children's education? The response was immediate and furious. Parents were outraged. The Martinez family, specifically targeted in the video, was devastated and angry. Protests were organized outside the school. Local news picked up the story. Diana tried to defend herself, claiming the video was taken out of context, that it was doctored, but I had made sure the metadata was intact, showing it was authentic. Within days, there were calls for her resignation. The school board placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation. Her carefully cultivated image as a caring community leader crumbled overnight. 2 down, 1 to go. Raymond was the final target, and I wanted to make it count. I had so much material on him, it was hard to choose. But then I found it. The perfect clip. It was from one of his podcast recordings, a conversation with his producer that he thought wasn't being recorded. He was complaining about a listener who had followed his advice and lost everything. These people, he said, his voice full of disdain, they're so desperate for a magic solution that they'll believe anything. I tell them exactly what they want to hear, and they eat it up. If they're dumb enough to follow advice without doing their own research, that's on them. I sleep just fine at night. The producer had asked about the ethics of it, and Raymond had laughed. Ethics? Please. I'm running a business, not a charity. Besides, their failures create more content. Lessons from mistakes, how to bounce back, all that garbage. It's a beautiful cycle. But the piece that made it perfect was what he said next. I don't sponsor failures. I never have, even if they're my own flesh and blood. That daughter of mine? Perfect example of everything not to do. Cut her loose years ago, best decision I ever made. I had that clip. I had it all. But I wanted to do more than just post it. I wanted to destroy him in real time, in front of his audience. It took me another week to figure out how to do it. Learning about streaming protocols and finding a vulnerability in his podcast's live stream setup. The next time he went live, I was ready. Raymond started his show like always, his voice smooth and confident. Welcome back to Smart Financial Leadership. Today we're talking about investing in yourself, cutting out toxic influences, and building generational wealth. I waited until he was 10 minutes in, until he had thousands of viewers, until he was right in the middle of one of his inspirational speeches about integrity and family values. Then I struck. The stream glitched for a second, then my audio clip started playing, overlaid right on top of his show. Raymond's own voice, clear as day, saying those horrible things. The clip played in full, including his comment about me, about cutting me loose. I watched through my own screen as Raymond's face went white. He tried to cut the stream, but I had locked him out for 60 seconds. Long enough for everyone to hear it all. Long enough for people to start recording, to start sharing. When he finally managed to end the stream, the damage was done. The video was everywhere within minutes. His subscribers were furious, feeling manipulated and betrayed. Financial regulators started looking into his advice, questioning whether he had deliberately misled people. Lawsuits started piling up from people who had lost money following his guidance. His reputation was destroyed. His podcast was removed from major platforms. Sponsors pulled out. Everything he had built came crashing down. All 3 of them, ruined. Their perfect lives, their perfect images, all revealed to be nothing but lies and cruelty. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. And I did, in a way. But there was also an emptiness, a hollowness, that I hadn't expected. Revenge didn't fill the hole they had left. It didn't erase the pain or heal the wounds. But it did give me closure. A few weeks after Raymond's podcast collapsed, I received a letter from a law firm. There was a class action lawsuit against Diana and the school board, and they wanted to use my recordings as evidence. They assured me my identity would be protected, that I could testify anonymously. I agreed. It felt right, using the evidence not just for revenge but for justice, for the families they had hurt, for the students Diana had dismissed and demeaned. But there was one more thing I needed to do. One final confrontation. I rented a small event space in Harmony Falls. Nothing fancy, just a room with chairs and a screen. I sent out invitations under the guise of a charity organization called Hope for Daughters, claiming to be honoring mothers who had overcome adversity. I knew they would come. They were desperate to rehabilitate their images, to find any platform that would have them. They showed up on a Saturday afternoon. Raymond in a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, Diana in pearls and a carefully pressed dress, Scarlett in designer everything, trying to look humble and failing. They looked tired, stressed, older than I remembered. Good. I greeted them at the door, wearing a simple black dress, my hair pulled back. They didn't recognize me at first. I had lost weight, had cut my hair, and there was something different in my eyes, something harder. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady. "Please, come in. The presentation is about to begin." I led them into the room. It was empty except for chairs facing a large screen. They sat down, looking around nervously, probably wondering where everyone else was. The door clicked shut behind them, locked automatically. They noticed, tensing. "What is this?" Raymond demanded. I didn't answer. Instead, I pressed play on the remote. The screen lit up, and I watched their faces as they realized what they were seeing. It wasn't one of the scandal videos. It was old home footage, videos I had found buried in the cloud storage. Memories from before everything went wrong, or maybe memories that showed exactly how wrong things had always been. There was Chloe, 5 years old, coloring at the kitchen table. She looked up at the camera, Diana holding it, and asked in her small, innocent voice, "Grandma, do you love me? Or only when I'm better than Sarah?" Sarah was Scarlett's daughter, the other grandchild, the favored one. Even at 5, Chloe had known she was less than. My voice came through on the video, off camera. "They don't know how to love, sweetie, but I do, and I always will." I let the video play, clip after clip. Moments of cruelty they had probably forgotten. Times they had dismissed Chloe, ignored her, made her feel invisible. Times they had done the same to me. Then the lights came on, and I stepped out from the shadows at the back of the room. Chloe was with me. She wasn't crying, wasn't scared. She stood tall, holding my hand, and she looked at them with clear, steady eyes. "You left us on the highway," Chloe said, her voice stronger than I had ever heard it. "You threw us away like trash, but I never needed you to find my way home." I looked at Raymond, at Diana, at Scarlett. Diana's hands were shaking. Raymond was staring at the floor. Scarlett had tears running down her face, but I didn't know if they were real or just another performance. "I spent my whole life trying to earn your love," I said quietly, "trying to be good enough, trying to matter to you. But the truth is, you were never capable of loving anyone but yourselves." Diana opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "No, you don't get to explain or justify or apologize. You don't get anything from me anymore. I just wanted you to see us one last time, to see what you threw away, to see that we survived, that we're better off without you." I took Chloe's hand, and we walked toward the door. As we passed them, Scarlett reached out, her voice breaking. "Please, let me explain. I can change. We can all change." I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. Goodbye. Outside, there was a crowd. Not a huge one, but significant. Local news reporters, some townspeople, parents from the school. Someone must have tipped them off. Or maybe they had followed Raymond and Diana, hoping for a story. A reporter stepped forward, microphone ready. "Miss Vance, do you have anything you want to say to the people who did this to you?" I looked at the camera, at Chloe beside me, at the crowd of people watching. I thought about all the nights I had cried myself to sleep, all the times I had felt worthless, all the pain they had caused. They taught me who I needed to be. I said finally, and who I never wanted to become. Then Chloe and I walked away, hand in hand, leaving them behind for good. Life in Harmony Falls became our new normal. Maeve gave me more responsibilities at the diner, eventually making me assistant manager. I continued freelance video editing work, but now I used my skills to help small businesses, nonprofits, people trying to make a positive difference. Chloe thrived. She made friends at school, joined the art club, started smiling again. The nightmares became less frequent, then rare, then stopped altogether. She was still cautious around adults, still protective of herself, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. She had learned to value herself, to recognize toxic behavior, to set boundaries. Lessons I wished I had learned earlier. I never spoke to my family again. I heard through the grapevine that Raymond had declared bankruptcy, that Diana had moved to another state, that Scarlett was working a regular job, her influencer dreams dead. I felt nothing about it. No satisfaction, no pity, nothing. They were simply no longer part of my life. The lawsuit against the school board was successful. The Martinez family received a settlement, and new policies were put in place to protect students with special needs. I had contributed to something good, something that mattered. One evening, about a year after everything had happened, I was closing up the diner when Maeve sat down across from me with 2 cups of coffee. "You did good," she said simply. "I destroyed them," I replied. "I'm not sure that's good." Maeve shrugged. "You exposed the truth. What they did with that truth, how they responded, that was on them. You gave people information they needed to protect themselves. That's not revenge. That's justice." Maybe she was right. Maybe there was a difference. Besides, Maeve continued, "Look at you now. Look at Chloe. You're both happy, healthy, safe. You built something real out of the ashes they left you in. That's the real victory." I thought about that. She was right. The real victory wasn't in their downfall. It was in our survival, in our healing, in the life we had built. Chloe came running in from the kitchen, where she had been doing homework. "Mom, Mrs. Rodriguez says my painting is going to be in the school art show." I pulled her into a hug, this beautiful, resilient child who had been through so much and come out stronger. "That's amazing, baby. I'm so proud of you." She hugged me back, tight and warm and real. This was my family now. Chloe, Maeve, the community of Harmony Falls that had welcomed us and helped us heal. This was love, real love, not the conditional, toxic thing my blood relatives had offered. Sometimes I still thought about that night on Highway 15, about the moment when everything shattered. But it didn't hurt anymore, not the way it used to. It was just a scar now, a reminder of what I had survived, of how far I had come. I had been thrown away like garbage, left to die in the desert. But I hadn't died. I had risen from those ashes, had found my strength, had learned my worth, and I had made sure the world knew the truth. Not for revenge, though that had been satisfying, but for justice, for closure, for the peace of knowing that they couldn't hurt anyone else the way they had hurt us. I looked out the window at the quiet street, at the peaceful town that had become our home. Chloe was laughing at something Maeve had said, her whole face lit up with joy. This was my life now. This was our life, and it was good, better than good. It was ours, built on truth and love and resilience. They had tried to erase us, to write us out of their story. Instead, we had written our own. A story of survival, of strength, of learning to love ourselves even when others couldn't. A story of finding family in unexpected places and building a future from broken pieces. And it was just beginning. 2 years later, I stood in front of a small storefront in downtown Harmony Falls, keys in hand. The sign above the door read, "Second Chances Media, Video Editing and Digital Services." It was mine, all mine. The journey to get here hadn't been easy. After the scandal broke and my family's world collapsed, I had expected to feel complete, whole, satisfied. But revenge, I learned, doesn't heal wounds. It just exposes them, leaves them raw and open to the air. The real healing came in the quiet moments, in the therapy sessions I finally allowed myself to attend, in the slow rebuilding of trust and self-worth. Maeve had been instrumental in that. She had sat with me on countless nights when the guilt threatened to overwhelm me, when I questioned whether I had gone too far, whether I was any better than them. "You told the truth," she had said, over and over, like a mantra. "You didn't lie, you didn't fabricate, you simply showed people who they really were. What they chose to do with that information was their responsibility, not yours." But it was Dr. Sarah Chen, the therapist Maeve had helped me find, who really helped me understand what had happened to me. Terms like narcissistic abuse, scapegoating, and golden child syndrome gave names to experiences I had thought were just my failure to be good enough. "You were trained from childhood to believe your worth was conditional, doctor," Chen had explained during one of our sessions. "That love had to be earned through sacrifice and perfection. But that's not love, Alara. That's manipulation." Chloe had her own therapist, a kind woman named Mrs. Thompson, who specialized in childhood trauma. I watched my daughter slowly come back to herself, or maybe become a new version of herself, one who knew she deserved better. The legal battles had been exhausting but ultimately satisfying. The class action lawsuit against Diana and the school board had resulted in significant policy changes and compensation for affected families. Raymond faced multiple lawsuits from investors who had lost money following his advice, and while he managed to avoid criminal charges, his reputation was permanently destroyed. Scarlett had disappeared from social media entirely, reportedly working at a retail store in another state, using a different name. I tried not to think about them anymore. Some days I succeeded, some days I didn't. The bell above my shop door chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. Chloe burst in, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her face flushed with excitement. Mom, guess what? My video project won first place in the regional competition. I swept her into a hug, my heart swelling with pride. At 9 years old, she had discovered a passion for filmmaking, inspired by watching me work. She had a natural eye for composition, for storytelling, for finding beauty in unexpected places. That's incredible, baby. I knew you could do it. She pulled back, her eyes shining. And there's more. The prize includes a scholarship to a summer film program in Los Angeles. Can I go? Please? Los Angeles. My stomach tightened reflexively. It was where Scarlett had lived, where parts of my old life had unfolded. But I forced myself to breathe, to remember that California was a big state, that I couldn't let fear dictate our choices. Of course you can go, I said, smoothing her hair. We'll figure it out together. Later that evening, after Chloe had gone to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. My business was doing well, better than I had expected. I had clients ranging from local businesses to a few small nonprofits across the country who had found me through word of mouth. My specialty had become what I called truth-telling media, helping organizations share authentic stories, uncovering genuine narratives beneath polished surfaces. I had also started a YouTube channel under my real name this time, not hidden, not anonymous. It was called Rebuilding After Betrayal, and in it, I shared my story, my recovery process, the lessons I had learned. I never showed Chloe's face, never used my family's names, but I was honest about what had happened, about the journey from victim to survivor. The response had been overwhelming. Thousands of people reached out, sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of choosing themselves over toxic relationships, of the guilt and grief that came with setting boundaries. I had created a community, a space where people could feel less alone. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Scarlett, please, can we talk?" My hand froze over the screen. 2 years of silence, and now this. I stared at the message, feeling the old familiar tightness in my chest, the instinct to respond, to engage, to try one more time to make her understand. But then I thought of Dr. Chen's words, "You don't owe them your pain, your time, or your forgiveness. You owe yourself peace." I blocked the number without responding. The next morning, I woke to find an email in my business inbox. It was from a production company in New York, a legitimate one that I had heard of before. They had seen my YouTube channel and were interested in developing a documentary series about family estrangement and recovery. They wanted me to be a consultant, possibly even to share my story as one of the featured narratives. I read the email 3 times, my heart racing. This was bigger than anything I had imagined. This was a platform to help not just hundreds but potentially millions of people who were struggling with the same issues. But it also meant going public in a way I hadn't before. Really public. National television public. I called Maeve, who had become not just my employer and friend but something like the mother I had never really had. "What do you think?" I asked after explaining the situation. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I think you need to ask yourself what you want your legacy to be. Do you want to hide from what happened, or do you want to use it to help others?" "I'm scared," I admitted. Scared of being exposed, of judgment, of them seeing it and trying to insert themselves back into my life. "They might," Maeve said honestly, "but you're not the same person they threw away in the desert, Alara. You're stronger now. You've built boundaries. You know your worth. They can't take that away from you anymore." She was right. I knew she was right. I responded to the production company, agreeing to a preliminary meeting. 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to New York, my first time flying in years. Chloe was staying with Maeve, excited about their planned movie marathon and baking sessions. I tried not to think about all the things that could go wrong, tried to focus on the opportunity ahead. The production company's office was sleek and modern, all glass and chrome. The executive producer, a woman named Jenna Martinez, greeted me warmly. We sat in a conference room overlooking the Manhattan skyline, and she pulled up my YouTube channel on a large screen. "Your story is powerful," she said, "but more than that, the way you tell it is powerful. You don't sugarcoat, but you also don't sensationalize. You talk about the hard parts, the ugly parts, the parts where you weren't perfect. That's what people need to see." We talked for hours, about the scope of the project, about my boundaries, about how we could tell these stories in a way that was both honest and healing. Jenna understood, in a way that surprised me, the delicate balance between exposure and exploitation. "I was estranged from my own father for 15 years, she confessed toward the end of our meeting. "So I get it. I understand why this matters." By the time I left that office, I had agreed to be part of the project, not just as a consultant, but as one of the primary storytellers. My story would be the framework, the through line, but we would weave in others, creating a tapestry of experiences that showed the many faces of family trauma and recovery. On the flight home, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: excitement about the future. not just hope or determination, but actual excitement. This was bigger than revenge, bigger than my own pain. This was about creating change, about helping others find their way out of the darkness. When I got back to Harmony Falls, Chloe was waiting at the door with Maeve. She had made a welcome home banner, decorated with hand-drawn film reels and cameras. "So?" Chloe asked, bouncing on her toes. "How did it go?" I knelt down to her level, taking her hands in mine. "It went really well, baby, but I need to talk to you about something important. This documentary, if we do it, it means people will know our story. All of it. The good, the bad, everything. Are you okay with that?" Chloe was quiet for a moment, her face serious beyond her years. Then she said, "Will it help other kids who feel like I used to feel, like they're not good enough?" My throat tightened. "Yes, I think it will." She nodded decisively. "Then we should do it, because nobody should feel like that." Over the next 6 months, the documentary took shape. Film crews came to Harmony Falls, capturing our daily life, interviewing Maeve and Dr. Chen and even some of the community members who had supported us. They filmed me at work, helping a local nonprofit tell the story of domestic violence survivors. They captured Chloe in her element, creating short films with her friends. But the hardest part was the interview where I had to recount everything. Sitting in front of the camera, with Jenna gently asking questions, I told the whole story. From my childhood as the scapegoat, through years of trying to earn love that would never come, to that night on Highway 15, to my revenge, to my recovery. I cried. A lot. But I also laughed, remembering funny moments with Chloe, talking about the kindness of strangers like Silas, about Maeve's unwavering support. The story wasn't just about trauma anymore. It was about resilience. They also interviewed others. A man who had been disowned by his family for being gay and had built a chosen family. A woman who had cut ties with her abusive parents and was now a therapist helping others do the same. A teenager who had left home and found safety with a friend's family. Each story was different, but the themes were the same. Betrayal, pain, and ultimately, the courage to choose yourself. What they didn't do was contact my family. I had made that a condition of my participation. This wasn't about giving them a platform or a chance to defend themselves. This was about the people who survived them, and others like them. The documentary, titled Breaking the Bloodline, Stories of Family Estrangement and Healing, premiered at a film festival in the fall. Chloe and I attended, walking down an actual red carpet, her in a dress she had picked out herself, me in simple black, holding her hand tight. When our segment came on screen, when I watched my own story unfold in a darkened theater surrounded by strangers, I felt Chloe squeeze my hand. On screen, past me was saying, "I thought if I loved them enough, sacrificed enough, they would finally see my worth. But your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it." The audience was silent, riveted. I could hear sniffles throughout the theater. By the time the credits rolled, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. People approached me afterward, some to thank me, some to share their own stories, some just to hug me. One woman, probably in her 60s, took both my hands in hers. "I've been estranged from my daughter for 20 years, she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was the problem. I was the toxic one. Watching your story, hearing your pain, I finally understand what I did to her. Thank you for helping me see it." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to tell her it was too late, that 20 years of damage couldn't be undone. But another part of me, the part that had been healing, the part that had learned about grace and growth, simply said, it's never too late to acknowledge the truth and try to do better. The documentary was picked up by a major streaming platform and released globally 2 months later. Within a week, it was trending. Think pieces were written, therapists were recommending it to clients. Support groups formed online, and inevitably, my family saw it. I knew they had when the emails started coming. Not to my personal email, which they didn't have, but to my business email, which was public. Raymond's was first, a long, rambling message that somehow managed to be both apologetic and defensive. He was sorry I had taken things the wrong way, but insisted that everything he had done was tough love meant to make me stronger. He wanted to meet, to set the record straight. I deleted it without finishing. Diana's email was shorter, colder. She accused me of slander, of ruining the family name for profit, of being ungrateful for everything they had given me. She threatened legal action. I forwarded it to my lawyer and blocked her email address. Scarlett's was different. It was raw, messy, full of typos and obvious tears. She claimed she had been young, that she had been following our parents' lead, that she regretted everything. She begged for a chance to make amends, to be the sister she should have been. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, my only response to any of them. "Scarlett, I appreciate that you may have regrets, but my forgiveness is not something I owe you, and reconciliation is not something I'm interested in. I hope you find peace and healing in your own life, but it won't be with me. Please don't contact me again." Then I blocked her too. Dr. Chen had warned me this might happen, that going public could trigger attempts at reconnection. Remember, she had said, forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You can wish them well from a distance without letting them back into your life. The documentary's success led to other opportunities. I was invited to speak at conferences about family trauma and recovery. Universities wanted me to guest lecture. I was asked to write a book. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. But through it all, I kept my focus on what mattered. Chloe, our community in Harmony Falls, the work that gave me purpose. Chloe thrived in the attention. She was old enough now to understand the weight of our story, but young enough to be resilient, to bounce back. She started her own YouTube channel, teaching other kids basic filmmaking skills. It was wholesome, creative, nothing like Scarlett's manufactured perfection. One evening, almost 3 years after that night on Highway 15, Chloe and I were sitting on the porch of the small house we had finally been able to buy. It wasn't much, but it was ours. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Mom," Chloe said quietly, "do you ever wish things had been different? That they had been better people?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Sometimes, I wish I had had parents who loved me the way you deserve to be loved. But if things had been different, we might not have ended up here. We might not have met Maeve, or built this life, or helped all the people we've helped. So no, I wouldn't change it. Not anymore." Chloe nodded, leaning against me. "I'm glad we have each other." "Me too, baby, me too." Inside, my phone buzzed with notifications. Messages from people who had watched the documentary, who were finding the courage to leave toxic situations, to set boundaries, to choose themselves. Each message was a reminder that our pain had purpose, that our story mattered. I had been thrown away, discarded like garbage in the desert. But I had risen from those ashes not just to survive, but to thrive, to build a life of meaning and purpose, to help others do the same. The broken pieces of my past had been reformed into something new, something beautiful. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and honest and mine, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.